Can storytelling in a corporate world really mean something? In this episode of Real Impacts, we're bringing the narrative into focus. This is the power of storytelling. I'm joined by Richard Etienne, former videographer to Theresa May and founder of the introvert space. We look into why storytelling really matters, not just as a nice to have, but as an essential tool that has a tangible impact on goals and objectives. Of course, we want to know what life is really like behind the door of number 10, but that's not all. We also look at making sure corporate storytelling doesn't feel hollow, how to fight the case for creativity in a risk-averse workplace, and the difference between content and stories that really change behaviour. Let's get into it. Richard, welcome to Real Impacts, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the power of storytelling. So we're going to be exploring the impact storytelling can have, what storytelling actually means in practice, and where organisations might fall short when they're trying to deliver messages. Before we get going, can you just give a short intro to yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Richard Etienne, founder of the Introvert Space. We create training and guidance for introverts who wish to thrive and support organizations to perform better, not just louder. And I'm also the former videographer for the Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister at 10 Downing Street during the Brexit negotiation years.
We'll come on to that. I'm sure we'll come on to that very, very soon. So before we get into the subject and topic of storytelling, can you just give the listeners a brief, short version of your story? So how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, short version of my story is I had this burning ambition when I was younger to work in technology because my father encouraged me to do so. But then he sadly passed away when I was 20. He was only 51. And then I didn't go into university or finish university. And I went to the job center, saw a poster about funding new companies and asked if I could film promotional videos for each of those new companies once they got their funding. So then I had to deal with the DWP for years, which led me into government, which led me to the center of government eventually. And along the way, realized, wait a second, I'm this quiet guy. Why is everyone treating me differently? Oh, damn, I'm an introvert. Let's change this.
Fantastic. That was a concise, short version of your story. So within that, I know that from talking to you and listening to other podcasts you've been on in the past, that storytelling has been a constant throughout your career. So can you tell me when the first moment in time where you realised the power of storytelling?
I want to start at the beginning in terms of what I understood storytelling to be. And it's when someone described it as a washing line. So you have your washing line is your narrative, and everything has to clip onto it. Because if it doesn't, then it's like, wait, what does this belong to? And the first time that I felt like this was when I started working for a sports company and a betting company. And I didn't know anything about the sport that we were promoting, but I had to tell a story about some legend in this particular sport. And I had a series of questions given to me by my manager at the time, but the actual story itself, the thing that actually got everyone motivated and got them to click on whatever it was, wasn't what we recorded. It was what we said outside of recording. And it was that I was like, do you know what? Yes, this is what people want to hear. People want to hear, again, that narrative thread. Why did you get here? What did you take from this? And what can we learn from this? It's that power of three. It's all, we see it everywhere. And so, going forward, it was that. I know there's lots of acronyms that people use, the STAR, situation, task, action, result, but it's all that thread, that narrative thread. What is that washing line that goes across that we can all tag each of our elements to?
That's really interesting when you're talking about the bit before you started recording and the conversation beforehand, because I'm just thinking about the chat we just had when we've been sat here for 20 minutes. And there were times when we were talking, I was like, oh, I wish the cameras were on because
Right.
this is gold. And, it makes me think to some of the work we do as well. Quite often, the content that resonates with people more is some of the behind the scenes stuff, and rather than the actual message that we're delivering.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, is there anything from that experience and what you learnt back then around storytelling that still sits with you, and that you take through into your work today?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you think about the type of television that really does well, it's reality television, right?
Yeah.
And well, I mean, I'm going to show my age here, but it was Big Brother, changing rooms.
Changing rooms.
Right. So
Carol Smiley.
Yeah.
Was it Handy Andy?
Oh
That was
gosh,
it?
we're both showing our age now. Oh god. So once we as a nation saw those shows, it was like, oh wow, this is storytelling. We actually understand that connection, and so if you look, and I know we'll touch on this a bit later, but Christmas adverts, the John Lewis ad, for example, does incredibly well because of the storytelling elements that it uses. But it's that human connection, and that at the end, that call to action. So yes, that was wonderful. I'm crying, but okay, but what now? So what? And so that's that element I take into my place of work. It's that so what piece. So yes, make it connect, but give them a reason, something that will influence, change one's idea, behavior, culture. That to me is strategic storytelling instead of just content creation.
Okay. I've got lots of questions on that, but before we go too far down that road, we've got to talk about your time at Number 10. Yeah, so you were the official videographer for Theresa May. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me about what that role was and what was the brief that you were given?
So that role was essentially to create content for social media. Like that was it in a nutshell. But to go an element deeper, I was briefed by the head of communications at the time to make her more personable. Because prior to my arrival, she was called many things. Maybot, I think, was one of them. Yeah. And so it was just create more of a human connection. So looking through the social media at the time at Downing Street, a lot of the content was what you would probably see on the news, handshakes, waves, the rest of it, speeches to camera. But by, I think, spending the first fortnight in her presence, seeing the events that would happen at Downing Street, seeing the individuals that she would meet, members of the community, it had nothing to do with Brexit, nothing to do with senior leaders and the rest of it. That is what would make her more personable to the average viewer, to the electorate, etc. So that's what I did. That's what I made sure I recorded, and I would follow her, yes, to her trips, but you would see the journey time, like all these modes of transport just to get to this one meeting that probably only lasted 20 minutes, but it was for the good of the country. And there was one particular day where we went to The Hague, we went to Berlin, Strasbourg, and then back to London, all in 24 hours. So this is what the Prime Minister at the time was doing for us. Remember, she voted Remain, but she inherited the Brexit negotiation, and she was doing her best for that. And it was just trying to, again, show the narrative that she cares and showing it in a personable way.
Did you ever have any challenges with balancing, say, delivering on that and the brief that you were given versus maybe some of the direction from other areas in the government? I don't know, for example, let's say a message needs to be delivered, and but you're on the one hand trying to show her personality. Were those two things at odds sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. And what I would do then is get the voice of the people. So, for example, it may have been like a Chinese New Year event at Downing Street. And I could have filmed her speech and then showed bits of that and some cutaways of people laughing and whatever. But actually, what was more effective was hearing the voices of those in attendance, because that was more impactful. So actually, I didn't need to hear from the Prime Minister at the time, knowing what the Chinese community and wider community thought of the PM was, in my opinion, more impactful. And that actually, that's the type of content that would get signed off and put onto social media.
So with that, the brief you got to make Theresa May feel more human and personable, do you know what was behind that brief? The insights that led to someone writing that brief?
I mean, knowing what she was like before, especially as Home Secretary, wasn't a fan of being in front of the camera. And I mean, look, let's be frank. Like, politicians, number of politicians, world leaders, just aren't really cool, in a sense. Like, Barack Obama cool, or they have that kind of super friendly demeanor, like Jacinda Ardern. So it's like, how can we make our leader appeal to the entire country? Because there'll be people who didn't vote for her, but actually we've got elections coming up and other voting moments forthcoming. How can we make her appeal to the masses? And it's something that I do on a daily basis. That so what question again. When I go out for networking, I try not to ask people what they do. My question is, what gets you out of bed in the morning? And sometimes, the answers are various. Some people say, my kids. And then you get to,
my kids at 4 a.m.
Right. But ultimately, you see what matters to them and so forth. So the even though I wasn't in charge of the questions that she maybe, or her script that she would say in front of camera, at least with video, as we all know here, you can choose how something is communicated and in what element. So that's for me the personal piece. It was trying to find alternative ways to ask the same question.
And I know we're talking about probably something that's not relatable to many people listening, watching this podcast. But the reason I want to talk about it is because there are lots of synergies to corporate and internal comms. And I think some of the challenges that you face there, a lot of internal comms teams face on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, let's take a prime minister versus but alongside a CEO of a large FTSE. Both have really limited time. They're really important to comms teams to deliver messages to the organisation. But there's always that time thing's always a challenge. So. How do you think, like from your experience of working with someone with such limited time but has to deliver a set message, that comms leaders in companies can learn from?
So variation is one piece, and as someone who promotes a lot about personality type and introversion, extroversion, and how people take in information, I think it's important that senior leaders think about that. Turning up at a town hall and giving a live speech, that's not it. That's not what you need to do alone. There also needs to be the written form, the Q&A, the walk around, that kind of lunchtime drop-ins and those things, because everyone takes in information in different ways, but ultimately we still want to get to the point. Why are we doing this? Help me to understand the method as well. How can I help us to get there? So, for example, my last internal comms role was director of global internal comms, and we're talking San Diego to Singapore, and so the way to deliver the message will be different. So for me, it was a case of how can we do this, and I'm a visual guy, as you know. So there was this great campaign called Month in Pictures. And because I joined the organization during lockdown, a lot of us were at our homes. But hey, so it's internal comms. Gosh, we've got nothing to talk about. So got people to submit photographs in. And then after a while, once lockdown and the rest of it had lifted, it was getting the senior leaders to work out how can we match these images to the mission and value and purpose of our organization. And it's trying to find different methods for senior leaders to connect with people, and that was just images. So yeah, the options are vast, and it's trying to work with them on that.
And I think that sounds like a really great tactical thing you've done to create more engaging comms. Your previous life in Number 10 is probably quite unrelatable on the face of it to many of the people watching and listening to this podcast. But I think there's many synergies there to people who work in internal comms and in the corporate environment, because essentially you had the leader of an organisation, Organisation GB in this sense, and an audience being the population, some messages to deliver, and your challenge was to coach that person to deliver them in a different way. So have I got that right, or are there other synergies you can see between your experiences and the corporate space?
I think you're spot on, because ultimately with both versions of internal comms, it's what do we want people to think, feel, or do. And as long as we find different ways to communicate that message, then it works. So, for example, with Downing Street, I was there when they first started Instagram, would you believe? They didn't have an Instagram channel. Prior to that, it would be emails, to those who voted a certain way, also via the news and so forth. But now we've got another channel of social media for those who are there. And with CEOs, senior leaders within organizations, you have to do more than just the town hall events, because we'll have employees who may be introverts and might not want to raise their hand and speak in front of public. So how do we engage with those individuals who, according to Myers-Briggs, make up 56.8% of the working population? So it is that. It's trying to find different ways to help people to think, feel, or do something differently that's in line with your mission or values.
Yeah, so the key thing, like you said, is authenticity. So no matter the channel, it's about being authentic and showing your true self. Let's think about the channel again, but more broadly or tenuously, thinking about shifts in how content and media is consumed nowadays. So when I hear the word storytelling, I think of I'm talking about video and things like that. I think about a long, drawn out story, right? It might be a film, or in a comms context, it might be a few minutes video. But people don't really like to consume content in that way nowadays for a variety of reasons. Lots down to social media and how that just has changed attention spans.
Yeah.
Where does storytelling sit in 2026 with social media and short attention spans?
It's about almost starting at the end, isn't it? So that skip ad generation we're in has changed film trailers, for example, where they do a really rapid, this film trailer is about to start, and then the film trailer starts, right? So if there's a way that you can get to the point pretty much as soon as in this is the end game, find out how we get here, and then go into your story. That is generally what tends to keep people hooked for a bit longer. It definitely helps me, for sure. What about you, actually? What keeps you going
as a consumer?
As a consumer.
Yeah, interesting. I think for me, it comes back to authenticity. So I love YouTube, both shorts and longer form content. But what hooks me in is, this could be not good for business, but it's not the highly polished content. It's the more like vloggy style, sort of real story type content I like, because I can connect more to it, and I feel part of the conversation with that person on camera.
Indeed, yeah. And I would like to always try and bring that almost user-generated content style into internal comms.
Yeah.
So, for example, instead of saying, we have these vouchers that you can use, hey, for working at this organization, you get 25% off, insert company here. No, what you do is you get some guy, hi Mark, you just get him to spend a week using all of the different vouchers, and then he'll be like, has an article or a video that says, hey guys, I just saved 27 pounds in like 24 hours. Find out how. And then it's like, going through all the different stores. Like that to me is storytelling. That is authentic. It connects, it's personable. And this is the type of content in 2026 at least that keeps people hooked just a little bit longer.
100%. So I think that's brilliant, by the way. And I completely agree with that. There'll be people in comms teams listening to this. They'll be like, yeah, that sounds great, but I need to deliver some messaging in my company about goals for the year or what some Q4 results or whatever that might be. I want to try something different, but I'm the exec are never going to do anything different or support anything different. What is your advice to them to get buy-in in their organisation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. FOMO is one of them, the fear of missing out. So here's how other organizations have used their communications in the way that you're trying to pitch to them, and here's the results from that. So that's one element other elements is also getting other individuals who are influential voices within the organization to pitch to said senior leader. That's another one. And then also understanding what it is or why. Why does the said senior leader only want to stick to this? Are they risk averse in terms of the language use? So, for example, within diversity, equity, and inclusion, is there this kind of risk averse approach to not wanting to say, the wrong things? And well, if that's the case, then let's get some of those individuals within the organization who can help you not to do that. Or how can we create a more psychologically safe environment where these aren't mistakes, these are lessons, but ultimately we are still communicating that message that gets people to think, feel, or do something differently. So it is about getting either inside of the head of that senior leader, showing what other people are doing and doing it well, or getting an influential voice so that others are tooting your horn and it's not just coming from you, because when the masses come, then it's kind of hard to turn them down.
In the masses, there's often varying needs and for what they want from communication and what messaging they want from senior leaders. How do you, as a comms team, go about finding out what they are?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, again, it's having different methods, communication methods to do that. So, lunch and learn drop-ins. So give before you take is something I like to live by. So if, for example, we wish to lower the number of, it's controversial.
Okay.
Lower the number of days.
Are we going to have to cut this one out?
Yeah, no. Okay. Lower the number of days that people work from home in the week. Oof. Okay. All right. We're gonna move into a hybrid working pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we can invite people in for training or something in the office where people are there and they get to understand and respect how working together in person actually bolsters, the mission, values, and purpose of this organization. And then within that, shortly after or during that, there is the pitch, the promotion of hybrid working and so forth. It's what can we give to our people that helps them to understand the benefits of what we want to pitch afterwards. That is the approach that I often go with, and it's not mis-selling in any sort of way. It's a good form of marketing, communication, but it's still that narrative thread that we care about you, and this is how you get to contribute to what helps us to help you.
Okay, that's interesting. So I've got a question for you, Richard. Why does corporate storytelling often feel hollow and just almost centering around stats and facts and figures?
Generally because they don't involve the people that influence the stats. So it goes like this. We know that this time of year is a particular focal year for our women, and we have International Women's Days. It's Women's History Month, and we have our gender pay gap forthcoming, and then we talk about the work that certain individuals within the organization are doing as part of the focal team, behind all of that, and a bit of history behind that, and just having that past, present, and future kind of narrative that gives people a sense of, oh, okay, they've actually putting in some work here, and they're actually thinking about us, and it's timely because they've actually said it at this particular time of year, and then there's that element of it, but then also talking about how previous communication has actually affected change as well. So this isn't just another recycled piece of content, or not recycled, but kind of rinse and repeat. Like, here we go. It's this time of year again. Here's a new piece of comms. It's since the last, we have noticed this change.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying to the people listening is it's actually worth listening to this, because you could be part of the change going forward. And here's how.
To get to that point, though, measurement is needed.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
And that doesn't happen that often. I think if it did happen, we wouldn't have the same cycle of rinse and repeat. That, let's face it, no matter what organisation or industry you go into, it's pretty much the same 12-month calendar in the comms team.
Yeah.
So what's going wrong there? Is there not enough time and effort put into measurement and stats?
Jay-Z once said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And so the thing about actually revealing certain numbers that actually might not want to be presented to the people up top, then it's like, okay, I don't want to lose my job, or I don't want to be seen as if I'm not doing my job well or my team aren't performing well. But actually, what negative or not great figures can show is a need for maybe additional resource, maybe a change of format, channel, length. There are so many factors that could be at play here, but ultimately it can't all be rosy. Life isn't always rosy. So again, it goes back to that authenticity piece. Eventually people will see that you're just trying to mask what's really happening. So show us the whole picture, and then help us to help you.
It's interesting because marketing teams will be measuring the performance of campaigns until the cows come home, and there'll be all sorts of stats, but that doesn't really happen internally.
That's so true. And the thing is, right, I'm working with the UK's largest employee engagement data company, Ipsos, Carrion and Box, right now, to talk about personality at work.
Okay.
So, as I said earlier, introverts make up just over half of the workforce, but they don't. They're like a small fraction in senior management. I don't have exact figures; they haven't been released just yet. So, if you think about it, we have a lot of extroverts in senior management making decisions about what comms should go out, how a certain comms should go out, and so forth. And then, so when the all-staff survey results come out, and then just over half the organization is saying, I don't feel seen, blah, 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 they're like, but wait, that doesn't make sense. We just all agreed that this was going to be a wonderful approach, the best thing to do. What are we doing here? We're not looking at the data, and as I said earlier, we just need to get the whole picture in order for us to make the right change, not the preferred change. So
it's just from taking me back to a previous episode we recorded around leadership, and there was a stat that came up in that, and I don't want to quote the numbers in case I get them wrong, but it was along the lines of the majority of leaders think they're fantastic communicators, but a very small proportion of frontline workers feel heard And they're actually two different things, but they're all about communication.
Indeed, yeah. I if I could summarize diversity or inclusion or anything like that in just literally one sentence, is I see you. Like, that is it. Good communications helps the audience feel seen.
Yeah. And good communication isn't broadcasting a message or sending out a newsletter.
Not at all. Yeah, that kind of way, like sweeping.
Blanket, yeah.
Was it spaghetti on the wall or whatever?
Yeah, and hoping something sticks. Spaghetti, I've heard other things being thrown out. Yeah.
It's PG-13.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about what you do now and the work that you do today. Is you've just alluded to that. So what are the challenges that you help organizations and leaders overcome?
Yeah, so it's personality inclusion. So if you think about it, like onboarding training, for example, we have training for all of the protected characteristics, or majority of them at least, which is completely fine. But the one thing that we all have, a personality, it just doesn't seem to feature. And as a result, there are a high number of introverts that don't progress into senior management roles, just aren't heard in certain meetings. Imagine being in a brainstorming session, you're someone who just needs a bit more time to process information. You prefer not to race ahead or speak loud. Then all of the wonderful bits of value and innovation that you were hired for get silenced, and as a result, that individual is left behind. The organization suffers as a result more broadly. So the introvert space helps introverts to thrive in extrovert favored environments with training and resources to help kind of almost circumvent some of that. But we also then provide guidance for organizations to create a more personality inclusive working environment, for sure.
Okay. And what's an introverted extrovert?
An introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
An introverted extrovert. I've heard of an extroverted introvert. That's what people tend to call me. But in terms of personality type, it's how one gains or drains energy. That is literally how I summarize it. It's got nothing to do with being shy or being super outspoken and friendly to everybody. It's like how one gains or drains energy. Think of a sand timer. Mine just seems to fall a lot quicker than someone else's.
Okay. Very interesting. So you're an introvert?
I am indeed. Yeah, I am. I only found out this after reading a book from Susan Cain called Quiet. Back about almost 10 years ago, and I used to run a series of masterclasses with the Guardian newspaper for about 8 or so years, and when they stopped the masterclasses, moved on to the Standard. And I was, once those things had completed, I had a lot of past students reach out to me and say, hey, when's the next event, when's your next book, et cetera. And that's what led me to create the introvert space, because there were clearly many introverted professionals who wanted a space to connect with other introverts, learn more, share more. And so, this is what I do. I run courses, I run interactive keynotes. I often go and support students, whether in sixth form or last year of university, those about to enter into the workforce for the first time, because, being an introvert in, as I said earlier, like an extrovert favored working environment can feel incredibly intimidating. So, how can we support such individuals positively?
I remember up until COVID, actually, I think there was more talk about introverts and extroverts. Specifically, when I had when I worked in a corporate environment, I remember there was chat about it. But it feels like COVID was a bit of a reset for many things, and I think that conversation was something that sort of fell by the wayside a bit. Yeah,
because I remember, again, lockdown, probably season 1, where introverts...
I love how you call it seasons, but...
they were introverts, were like, oh my God, this is amazing, I'm by myself.
Yeah.
But then by the time, we got to, say, season 3, everyone was like, no, this is too much. We need to... I miss connecting with people. And that's, again, it kind of proved the point that it's more about energy. It's less about people connecting and, being around individuals and talking to people. But yeah, as long as our leaders, and I mean that in terms of people managers, not just those at the top, understand the importance of personality awareness, they can definitely get the most and the best out of the people in their teams.
Going off topic of this episode now, actually, but
Love this.
Thinking about, we say COVID, home working, and home working is sort of here now to stay, or hybrid working. What are the impacts of home working on naturally introverted personality types?
It's a tough one because often I hear your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
And working from home, you are now no longer really around the opportunity to network with certain individuals of influence, bump into certain senior managers in the lift or the kitchen area.
Yeah.
And as introverts as well, the majority of introverts that I speak with, they find it a bit of a challenge to just reach out to individuals remotely as well. It's like, hey, Dan, via LinkedIn, hey, do you have 15 minutes for a chat? So there is this kind of dip now in exposure of certain introvert professionals' personal brand.
Yeah.
So that's the downside of hybrid working. But the upside, for sure, is that focused time for work. I remember working next to an elevator when I was at a particular government department.
Yeah.
And I was head of leadership communications at the time. And I remember certain senior leaders stepping out and they'd be like, oh, Richard, yes. Oh, gosh, I had this thing for you. And I'm like, we didn't have a meeting booked. I'm working here. So imagine being interrupted constantly throughout the day. And as an introvert, that's definitely not cool. So there are pluses and minuses for both sides of the personality spectrum. And I think it's important also to note that no one is a pure introvert or extrovert. These are things that we have preferences. So I'm definitely introvert preference. And, when I'm here now in my kind of extrovert slice. Skin, exactly.
Yeah.
For
the mask.
for this episode.
Where my mind goes is big company meets like town halls, for example, or away days. As an introvert, that's probably not the place you want to be.
No, and I remember standing at the back, when it was in person. I will never forget. I remember it was the head of the civil service, and stood on the podium. There were about 100 people in this room, open plan office, spread all over the place. And then he calls me to come up to say something. I can't remember what it was about, but dude, that is a no.
Yeah,
don't wish me happy birthday with the lights down in the restaurant and the cake comes out. I'm not ready. So yeah, with certain communicative channels and approaches, for sure, definitely personality plays a major point. If I was given the agenda, if I was told that I was going to be requested to share something, then that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And maybe there is something around channels with pace. That's totally fine for maybe the more extroverted preferenced. But I know for sure that I prefer communication so I get a newsletter, right? And it will say an exec summary of some, what they want to communicate. And then there's a click to watch a video that explains this in more detail. That is me, because what you're doing is you're giving me the option to decide how I consume this particular story. And I think that is a more favored approach across multiple personalities.
If you were coaching a comms team, what top 3 tips would you give them around being better storytellers?
Okay, so number 1, be authentic. And if I had to go deeper into that, it's just try not to do copy and paste, say what's true to you and your mission. At number 2, answer the so what question. You know, these John Lewis Christmas ads are amazing. But if at the end, you know, I'm wiping a tear from my eye and there's no call to action at the end, I won't know what to do. And then finally, I have to say this, consider personality type. So have varied ways in which you communicate your message, because one size does not fit all.
Richard, thank you so much for your time, your openness, and sharing stories about your past experience. I'm really looking forward to sharing this episode.
Thanks, Dan.